All right. And welcome, folks, to I guess this is technically a Three Slurred Limits / MLB Pro Happy Hour. But in reality, it is the first episode of our 2021 MLB Pro preview for teams that are not in the 2020 playoff race. I'm going to welcome my man, Justin Jabs, in. Justin, I appreciate you joining us for the first edition of this, man, and kind of being the guinea pig to test this out. I sent a couple questions out to you, obviously, ahead of time, but let's get with a really quick breakdown of the 2020 season. Are the Cubs where you thought they'd be right now in 2020 before we go to 2021?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, Brenton, thanks for having me. I'm excited that you're shedding the spotlight on some of the little guys, who don't have much to play for, as we talked about before.
Yeah, the small market team that is the Chicago Cubs, exactly.
Yeah. Don't get enough press in the Chicago media market now that we got the White Sox actually doing good. As far as where the Cubs were supposed to be this year, to be honest, I wasn't really sure what I was looking for. I always try to go into each season with, except for the first season where I really did the tank rebuilds thing a couple years ago. The last couple of years, just trying to put the best team on the field without quite mortgaging the future. I've done some opportunistic spending, as everybody's seen, bringing in Madison Bumgarner and Pablo Sandoval instead of just letting that cash go back to ownership. So I thought that maybe, I could, on the periphery of a wild card, see what might happen. Obviously, I'm always optimistic, and that didn't quite happen this year. But, I don't know. It's been good to see that there's no super major injuries. It's been good to have, guys like Ed Harris and a few of those guys actually solidify and say, yeah, this is a good player that we can build for the future. That's kind of where the Cubs are at in 2020. Tried to see what might happen. Nothing really happened. So just doing the best we can.
I love it. Sorry, I don't know how loud that helicopter was. It just flew off here. But I had to pause it or mute it just in case. That actually brought up two really specific questions I hadn't planned on asking, but I wanted to run through them, right? First part being, what is the plan for Matt Bum and for Pablo Sandoval? And then the second piece was, you were famously kind of absent for about a year there, right? You transitioned out to California with the move and stuff. So I'd just be curious to think, during those years where you weren't as active or maybe like 12 months when you weren't as active in the chat and so on and so forth, did you keep up and have a really specific plan during that time? Did that set you back a little bit? And the second part is, what the hell do you do with Pablo Sandoval and Madison Bumgarner here in 2021?
That's a great question. To your first question, that's part of the reason that I didn't really have many expectations going into the year. When there was real baseball that I was working and trying to sell, and that took up a lot of the time, and which is why I hadn't been around too much, for the past year plus. So that's part of the reason that I didn't really have expectations, because I was just, kind of coasting. Yeah. Had to get the reminders from the commissioners, like, hey, like, we know you've been in here from the start, but we can still kick you out, sort of things. But now that things have kind of slowed down and moving back here to Wisconsin and kind of focusing on more hobbies and different things instead of a job that doesn't exist for the moment. I've been exporting regularly, actually setting my lineups like myself for the first time in, what is this? How many years have we been doing this? Like 8 years? I would always just do whatever the manager said. So it's been kind of fun. But that definitely has something to do with it, as far as where the Cubs have kind of been. Still keeping up with the things in the realm of Chicago, but not so much the league as a whole during that time.
Okay. I love it. It's interesting. I didn't know you hadn't set your own lineups outside of your manager's suggestion until now. I just got into that this year as well. It's wild. It is. Yeah. I'm trying to do my own calculations. I'm doing all. It's not paying off at all at this point, but it's fun. It's what I've enjoyed most about it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've set what the lineups and the depth charts as a whole should look like, but like the day-to-day, like I know, I think Hodges is really big on that, like going in and actually setting the lineup, the 7-day lineups. So that's what I've been doing here in the past, probably about past week and a half, I've been doing that. So that's been fun.
There's the extreme that was Andy, if everyone remembers Andy, right, where he was like, he would demand to know who your pitcher was 2 days out so he could do research on the person specific to that. And then there's the other side of it, which apparently is where you and I land, which is like, set some 7-day lineups and we'll go from there. So it's interesting to see the amount of strategy here. All right, real quick before we dive into 2021, Mad Bum and Pablo Sandoval. Expectations when you signed them, were you trying to flip them? Were they sign and flip guys? Were you thought you compete? What was the thought process there? Hey, buddy.
Yeah. They definitely were not flip candidates. I mean, if you look at the contracts, each of them, I had the budgetary space, even when I was maxing out my player development and my scouting these past couple of years, still had a ton of budget room because all these guys were on minimum contracts.
Yeah.
So Mad Bum, the age worked a little bit better. I think, how old is he? Like 31 or something like that.
Yeah,
and then Sandoval is a little bit older, but I mean, the guys were available, and I wanted to give them some money early when we had money to spend. And so I front loaded their contracts. And so I think if I was trying to flip them, it would have been more like backloaded. Obviously, you don't want to spend money that you don't have to.
Yeah.
But it was kind of the real life Nationals, like Jason Worth type of deal is kind of what I was thinking about. Like maybe a couple of years away, try to get some veterans in there, try to give them the majority of the money that they will deserve and that they will need. And then when the rest of the team kind of comes together, they'll only be making $15, $14 million each, like per year, which is still a lot of money. That's a significant part of payroll, but that's not bad. So
no, I didn't realize that. I hadn't looked at the actual specifics of the contract. I didn't realize it was so front loaded. That's very smart. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Good. So they weren't flip candidates. So they're still part of the 2021 plan, which is an excellent segue to launch into this. So holistically, 2021 expectations. Give me a number. How many wins did the Cubs expect to get in 2021?
Yes. So if I got to be pinned down to a number, I'll say maybe like 75, 77 or so.
Okay.
I just want to keep improving each year. Like back in 2018, I had 53 wins. That was the first after my 2017 postseason run didn't work out. That was the first year where I kind of tore it all down. We had 61 wins last year. We just won our 62nd victory last week.
Okay.
So just kind of keep progressing and keep moving forward. As far as like where in the division and stuff, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but nobody in the NL Central seems to want to win. Like, I mean, people are trying to win, but like it's like the Cardinals, the Pirates, kind of on that periphery, and then just these three crappy teams, myself included. So trying to get more instead of like the last place conversation, maybe more in like the fourth or third place conversation, just kind of crawling up in the division, I guess is the goal for next year.
I mean, you do have some new / old blood, right, in Cincinnati, coming back to the Central, the former manager of the Pirates. I always want to call him Pete, but I think Pete was the guy before him. I'm blanking on his name, but he's now running the Reds, right? He's publicly stated he's going to try and drive this thing forward very quickly. The Pirates organization, despite their early success, stuck really strong to the fact that they were not trying to go in this year and make a strong push, right? They were still building for the future. So that's an interesting team as well. Ryan Brookman in St. Louis consistently says, he'll pop in every couple of weeks and talk a bunch of trash about being underappreciated and these things. He's right. His team is consistently underappreciated. They're a very good ball club. So this is a very interesting division, right? And the Brewers are the Brewers. I think the Brewers are going to suffer from what could have been a very, very smart move to move on from the fellow's name is escaping me right now. The guy they dealt to Houston. I think he could have netted a bigger return. There's a huge hubbub about that, obviously, in the moment. But I think Milwaukee will suffer from that for a long time, despite the fact that they're kind of in the playoff hunt right now. So
Esteban was that?
Esteban Hernandez was dealt, but there was a different. It's the other guy. He's like one of Houston's best players right now. He's in the running for a Major League, American League MVP, despite the fact that Houston sucks. It's Sanchez, I think, something like that. Anyway, he's one of the best batters in the league. He got dealt to Houston, and it was a whole thing a couple years ago. So anyway, the point is, you're kind of right? Nobody in the Central outside of St. Louis wants to drive forward and make that push. So 75 wins in 2021, where does that put you? Is that enough to put you in that second slot? Which, I mean, right now you'd be right about where Pittsburgh is. I think they have 70-something wins right now. That could put you in place.
Yeah. I mean, second or third place would be great. Like, I don't think we have the talent right now to take down St. Louis, but something in that conversation, I think that would be a win as we keep on going forward.
Okay. Before we jump to talent, give me your breakdown. What's the rundown 1 to 5 of the NL Central next year? Obviously, these are recorded, so you're going to be held to this correctly. So what's the breakdown?
Yes. So accepting the fact, like we talked about before, I've been more focused on what's going on in Chicago than looking at the rest of the division necessarily. St. Louis, number 1. This is going to be boring, but I'll do basically what we have right now, but inserting the Cubs right in the middle. So Cardinals, Pirates, Cubs, Brewers, Reds.
Okay. I like that. That's interesting. I think I would flip the Reds and the Brewers, and maybe even the Cubs, but the Reds in the middle. They do have the talent. So the talent they traded for Colby Allard is what's interesting to me, right? And again, to your point, you haven't been paying a ton of attention, but there's two very good middle infield, corner infield pieces they got back for Allard. That should they come up next year and perform, I think the Reds have a chance to make a run at that 2 position. But you're right. I mean, really that 2 through 5 in the Central can be anybody. I think the Cardinals are the class of the division. And you have a realistic chance, should some of these guys we're about to talk about make this leap in here in 2021, I think the Cubs have enough pieces to make a run at that second position and maybe push for a National League wild card spot, considering how shitty the league is as a whole.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's make a kind of transition here to 2021. The rotation specifically, as it currently sits, I don't know exactly what the rotation looks like. What are the key additions, subtractions you're looking at? Let's start with subtractions first. Anybody in the rotation currently in 2020 that is not going to be there in 2021?
Yeah, good question. There are definitely a lot of question marks with the rotation. As far as subtractions, Mark Sorensen, who has been my guy for 7 or 8 years, he's sucked a lot this year. He's struggled a lot. We kept on throwing him out there. He'd have like 1 or 2 games where he'd give up a run or 2, and then all of a sudden a 6 spot is put on him. So we took him out of the rotation for September. Want to give some younger guys a try. Depending on how the rotation breaks out, if we see any guys in free agency, again, I've got some money, so I'm willing to kind of look there for added pieces. I don't know who's going to be on the market, but depending on if it fits with the timeline, we might see some free agents coming to Chicago for the starting rotation. But Sorensen is probably out, probably in like a bullpen, like long relief role. When I signed him to his 10-year, $13 million contract, like it was with the intention that when he starts sucking, like he can just pitch in relief, or worst case scenario, like that's like $2 million off the payroll if I get rid of him. So yeah, barring a big spring training push or us not finding the pieces in the minor leagues or on the free agent market, he's probably out of the rotation. Another guy, our number 5 this year, Richard Dean. I don't know, he's a lefty. He's been struggling this year. 26 years old. We claimed him off waivers a couple years ago. He's been good. Like he hasn't gotten hurt. So he's been eating up innings for us. But if we're trying to upgrade and we're trying to get some new fresh blood in here, he's another guy that might get out of the way.
Okay. So you got 2 spots potentially open on the rotation. Anybody in that AAA, AA sense right now internally that have a shot in spring training to take those spots in the rotation?
Yeah, great question. So we just called up one of the guys, Elijah Manning, who did 5 innings, 1 run. He's had a couple of good seasons in the minor leagues, like in the kind of ERA WAR, ERA plus departments. The strikeout to walk ratio has been back and forth a little bit, but we're going to give him 4 starts in September, and then we're going to give him a shot in spring training. We'll see what happens. Another guy is Jason Hatfield. This is a guy that I acquired. Where did I even get him? Trade with Cleveland. The Alberto Madrid trade back in 2018. He was one of my better players. So Hatfield came back. He's one of those classic guys that the scouting report looks great, and we've tried him, and it hasn't quite clicked yet. He tires out pretty easily. He's got a low stamina, so we're trying him in the follower role in September. So we're already essentially going for spring training here in 2020 for next year. So maybe with using the openers and the followers, which I haven't really used before, a guy like Hatfield who, 3rd time around the order starts to tucker out, starts to give up those big hits, he might click in a follower role, and we can use something like that. And then the other guy that I'm excited down in the minors, potentially to break the rotation next year, Julio Urias, who was my big get for the trade deadline. Yep. Nice young arm. What is he, like 24 years old or something like that? Lefty that we got from LA. The Dodgers. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that was the Casey Mulligan deal. Casey Mulligan and the kicker for a 24-year-old starting pitcher who could very well be one of our best starters next year.
Yeah, I love that addition for the Cubs, honestly. I was chasing Urias pretty hard, but I didn't quite have the pieces to get him at the deadline, so I love that pickup for the Cubs. He does have it's either a control issue or a stamina issue. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's a guy that's worth a shot, and I think can really produce results with the right defense behind him. So that's interesting. So you've got a couple guys, that are on the way up. Obviously, free agency is a crapshoot in this league. It's just such a weird. Nobody hits free agency, right? If you're gonna hit the end of your deal by the end of the year, it's almost a guarantee you'll be traded before the deadline, somebody trying to make a push that is willing to throw $30 million a year at you really quick. It just doesn't happen very often. So I don't know that you can bank your free agency strategy. So I agree with you there. Trades are a crapshoot, right? So let's talk. Well, let's push those to the side as well. Let's go to the lineup, right? So let's talk same situation here. Who is likely to exit the 2020 Cubs lineup at the end of this year, whether it be via free agency, whether it be they're just kicked out of the lineup because they suck, or there's somebody coming up specifically to replace them. There's a couple guys down there right at that AAA, AA level that I've got my eye on. I think maybe make a shot here.
Yeah. So a lot of the outfield is pretty well set. The changes might come in the infield. So the outfield, Yordan Alvarez, he's sticking around. He struggled a little bit to start, but he's a mainstay in left field. Ed Harris and then Camden Miles over in right. So for guys where we could potentially upgrade, Giosker Amaya, he's our shortstop. I think he's great as like a backup infielder.
Mm-hmm.
He plays well at each one of those positions. Just because we don't really have anybody. Julian Garcia is a young guy, plays great defense down in the minor leagues. He's come up once or twice and hasn't quite hit. So we wanted him to kind of take that shortstop role, but he hasn't taken it and grabbed it. So that's why our backup infielder is playing shortstop every day. So he's a guy who could be upgraded. Bill Lowe, our first baseman, we talked about at the trade deadline. He might be a guy that might be traded, might be getting out of there. My dream, because Pablo can play first and third, and he's got a lot of money, and we're just going to roll with him for now. If I could maybe find a buyer for Bill Lowe, slide Pablo over to first, and then eventually, probably not at the start of the season, but eventually Jake Berger, one of our top prospects coming up. I think that might be more of a mid-season deal, if we want to get rid of Lowe or see the opportunity there. But yeah, outfields, and then, obviously we're not going to move Pablo. And so that kind of second, third, first base situation might be where we see some changes.
Yeah. He was the one I had my eye on. Right. What do you need to see out of Jake Berger in spring? Now, obviously, it's a stretch. Like you said, he won a midseason. But what does Jake Berger do in spring to get him that starting role opening day in Chicago?
That's a good question. To be honest, I think it's going to be really tough because instead of the spring training stats, which we both know can be fluky, I'd rather see him have some good, consistent time down at AAA.
Yeah, he's been rough.
So it's been rough. It's only been 35 games or so. Did pretty well in AA. We called him up mid-season. We need to add him to the 40-man roster this year. So we're going to start to burn those option years. But I'd just say not sucking in AAA for 2 months maybe would get him the call.
So it's more important that he get the experience in spring. He gets on the 40-man, and then April, May are solid in AAA. Well, I guess May really, and maybe early June are important in AAA for you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's smart. I like it.
I mean, he's a young guy. He's our second round pick a couple years back, just 24 years old. Like, we don't want to screw up with him. It was kind of a gamble bringing up Yordan Alvarez so early, but I think he proved that he belonged. But I don't want to necessarily take that gamble with Jake Berger, a guy who we've been grooming. We invested this time in, whereas a guy like Yordan, we just bought him last year, essentially at the end of IFA, and so it's worked out.
Yeah. So that leads me to a question I think you might already have kind of given me the answer to, but this was my sort of surprise look when I saw this, and that's your 2020 draft pick, Gavin Lux. Has hit the ball very well, has risen up to high A at this point, but the fellow who plays second base right now is totally escaping my mind, but he has been atrocious this year. Hitting sub 200, if I'm not mistaken, over 130 games started at second base. Does Gavin Lux get an invite to spring, and does he have a shot to take over as a starting second baseman in 2021, given the fact that what's the guy's name?
The Yosuke Sasaki.
Yeah, given the fact that Sasaki has sucked so hard at second base, does Lux get a shot at second in spring?
That's honestly, that's something I hadn't considered yet. That's a good question. Gavin, he was in rookie ball, but we promoted him up to low A so that he could be double play partners with Matthew Lugo, who famously did not play during my sabbatical last year.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to get them kind of on the same page down there. I think those are two big pieces of the future. Obviously, Lex is playing well, like you said. So I don't know if challenging the majors would be in the cards for next year. I guess it depends on how he hits and how the rest of our if we're actually in the wild card hunt and he's smoking the shit out of the ball down there, we might consider it. But it's not something that has crossed my mind yet. So
okay.
That's a good point.
So not likely a 2021 spring invite. I guess I'm looking at this thing like from two sides, right? You have the if you want to pretend like this is real baseball, you have to pretend like you don't see the ratings, right? Just like you're swinging the ball well. His stats are good, but even when you look at his ratings, he seems to be almost at the culmination of his potential development, and his current ratings are very good. These are my scouts ratings. So I was just very interested to see what your thoughts were there. But I guess it's a good point. Like, see where you come out of the gates. The good thing about being in the Central is you have that luxury, right? You're not in AL West where you've got to sort of commit. If you're the Astros and you got a guy that can come up and contribute, you've got to do it if you want to compete that year. For you, you kind of slow play it through May, even into June maybe, and you kind of look at, all right, I'm 5 games back. I'm 2 games back. I can make a run at this thing, and he can come up. So that's interesting. That's a good thought, right? So final couple pieces we'll talk about, right? Let's talk spring 2021. We already said Gavin Lux probably not getting the invite. Jake Berger probably is getting the invite. Who are the additional Cubs prospects that get their first taste of big league baseball in that spring training invite? Who gets invited to camp?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys down on AAA, not for their first taste, but a couple guys who are going to get another shot. Dustin O'Neill is out of options, so he's going to be on the bubble. He's going to be getting a lot of playing time in spring training. Julian Garcia, our great defensive shortstop who we talked about before, he's going to get the call there in spring training. There's a couple other guys who have been hitting pretty well down there that we did a slew of promotions from Tennessee AA and kind of brought them up to see what's going on. Donald Odell is one of our better outfielders. He had an 811 OPS at AA this year, and he's still kept similar numbers, bringing up to AAA. The problem, I think, is I'm going to have to look at a lot of trades because a lot of the talent that I have that's about to come up is for the outfield, which is where I'm pretty darn set already, So as far as prospects coming up, maybe some of those guys get shipped out for some more ready big league pieces. But in addition to all that, too, we'll have our normal slew of 37-year-old relievers who might be able to contribute, with the 8th spot in the bullpen coming to spring. But the rotation pieces too. Tommy Simpson is another guy down there at AAA. He, similarly to Elijah Manning, he has had good success so far. He wasn't on the 40-man roster, so we didn't want to bring him up for a spot in the rotation just yet. But Tommy Simpson, in addition to Urias, and Dakota Hudson is another name down there who might be in the rotation mold or the bullpen mold, depending on what happens.
Got it. The Cubs outfield, as I think about it more, is something that deserves its own piece, I think. How you put that trio together is very interesting to me. Ed Harris was such a cool acquisition back when it happened. I think that the Miles story is very interesting. And then Yordan Alvarez being an IFA guy that came through so quickly. I'm always fascinated by them. I think the Cubs outfield may deserve its own story one day. We'll put that on the sideline for now, but we'll get to that one day. Rapid fire questions here, right? We're going to go down the last 5 things. Player on the current 2020 roster who is a potential giant leap forward candidate. So somebody in your starting lineup or rotation right now who you may think has a shot to jump forward to potentially be an all-star in 2021 that was not this year.
I really like Kevin Hunter, the guy that we got with the Rule 5 pick this last year. He's a guy that we've tried to mix in with the stacked outfield that we have. He's got insane power, great speed. Whether it's in Chicago or somewhere else, I think if he gets a little bit more time, a little more seasoning, he could take a big step forward next year.
Love it. Reverse question. Somebody in the 2020 lineup right now that you think is a potential, you don't want to think about it, I know, but to take a regression step backwards that you're worried about a little bit.
I'm always scared about like a guy like Ed Harris. Like I think he's good and I don't think it's going to happen, but when you have what I think is one of the best players in the league, like you always are kind of scared that what am I not seeing? Is this guy going to fall off? Another guy, Bill Lowe, maybe. Just because, I don't know, he hasn't been that great, but he's just been a dependable part in the lineup. And I think part of the reason I might be looking to trade him is I don't know, how valuable he's going to be going forward. He's going to be turning 30, so you don't know when that decline is going to be coming.
Yeah, I think Harris is where your fear lies probably. I think Lowe's a more realistic candidate, so I appreciate the duality there. 2021 Rookie of the Year in Chicago is who?
I'm going to go with Julio Urias. Why not?
I love it. I think that's 100%. I can see him as a 2.5, 3 WAR pitcher. That's a stretch, obviously, because the 3 WAR as a pitcher is pretty solid. But he gets a hot out of the gates. I think he could be that good. 2021 Cy Young candidate for the Cubs, not for the league. For who's your Cy Young?
Yeah, yep. If not Julio, I still really like Don Porter. This was a guy that we got in the Rule 5 draft back in 2018. He was our sole All-Star that year. He's the only guy with a sub-4 ERA in our rotation right now. So, keep taking those steps forward. He'll be 27. And yeah.
Okay, I like it. And then the last one will be the 2021 MVP.
Ed Harris.
Ed Harris, yeah, that's a tough one to argue. I agree with you. I think he's undervalued in this league. I think he's somebody, not that the Cubs want to, but if they were to put him on the trade block, I don't know that he would garner enough interest to make you move him, which is kind of frustrating, right? Because he's one of those guys that deserves that love. And again, I don't think the Cubs are trying to move Ed Harris, but he's one of those guys that I think is undervalued across the league. Beautiful, man.
And I'm also, I'm a hoarder in all my shit laying around here, but also in players. Like when I get a guy I like, maybe to my detriment, like I like to hang on to him. So
I'm the exact opposite. I get a guy I like, and I move him 2 months later. So we combine those mindsets. We'd have a good team here. Anything final 2021 thoughts about the Cubs? Or I'll tell you what, before we get there, who wins the World Series this year?
I think it's Bruce's turn. Why not have the NL get it?
Hell yeah. I think if they're going to win it, this is the best chance the Mets are going to have. The National look, if somebody can knock Soze off, I think it's wide open. If the Mariners lose to the Angels just because he's in his own head about it, I think the National League has a chance. If Mariners make it to the World Series, everybody's fucked. That team's ridiculous. I love it. I'm cheering for the Mets hard too. Anything about the Cubs 2021 before I let you go?
No, I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be into this and putting the time in. And there's a lot of spreadsheets that'll be had this offseason as I reorganize the minors for the 12th time. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm glad that we did this.
I am too, man. Any chance the Jabs Cast comes back in 2021?
Ooh, we'll see. I am screwing around with Anchor for another, not another fantasy league, but another simulation thing. So We'll see.
I love it, man. I appreciate it. I'm going to hit stop. We're out.